Okay, welcome. So today we are going to be walking through on how we are going to import the data that we have collected during the field mapping for the GIS Day 2022. And it's a pretty simple process. So first and foremost, this video may be in three parts. One, using QGIS, which is a free and open source software. The other one will be in ArcGIS Pro, and the other one will be in ArcGIS Desktop. So if you don't have QGIS installed, it's pretty simple. You go to the website, download it and install. It's a very straightforward process. You don't need to be a whiz in order to do that, and you just get it done. And look at this. The website is download.qgis.org, where you can download this thing freely and you can use it the way you want. So what we are going to be doing today is to make sure that we process our data in the format that will, because we have a goal in mind to create a complete map, but we're going to do this in a stepwise format. The first step is to get the data into a GIS software like this, work with it, edit it, transform it, and see how we can use it. So the first thing to do is you go to where your data is housed. My own data is in D. Let me just quickly say this. Your QGIS panel may not just be this way. So, but we need some panels to be activated in order for you to have it something like this. As you can see here, I have the layer styling panel, the browser panel, and all whatnot. So all you need to do to activate some of these panels that we'll be needing for this tutorial will be to click on anywhere here, right click, and check these buttons. Like if I check this, you see that the browser panel has gone. So I'll click on anywhere here and check browser panel. And we need other panels too, just like the vector toolbar panel, the snapping toolbar, and the layer styling panel. So those are the panels that we'll be needing. And so I just go to my browser panel, go to D. I have it in Documents and Dr. Ijepu, and GIS Day 2022. So I have this file in this GPS logger. So the file that we're interested in is adding this GPX file. So the very simple, straightforward, if you want to add it, just click on it and drag it to this layers panel here. So it will tell you that we have several items and their descriptions. So if you see this, we have the route points, the routes, the track points, the tracks, and the waypoints. As you can see in all these, the points contain 0 file in it, while the line string contains 0. We have 79 points, and the tracks is just 1, and the waypoint is 0. So we don't need to add all those ones. So what we need to add is maybe just this, click on it, click on Control, and add it. So we have selected these two, and we add this layer. So now it's showing us that it's showing that the task is complete, so we can click this thing off. And now look at it. So in this grand scheme of things, we really don't need the point, but the way the GPS logger works is to collect these points as you're walking and interpolate these points to form a line. So all we have is these points and a line. And if we check this particular point, we see that we are just left with the line. Using your scroll button in your mouse, you can either go here and there. And if you right click here and say zoom to layer, it takes you to the particular layer. So the idea is simple. If you want to style this line, for example, you can just simply click on this line and click on this drop down here. Click on this drop down here, and you see you can check the different places. But in my own case, we are going to leave this, or you want to change this particular line here, you can still change the color however you want it. You can change the size and all that. Here it is 0.8, you can make it 1 and all that. So depending on how you really want it to be, but it still does not matter. So we can still have it in different formats and in different ways. So this is just the line here. And the next thing for us to do, you have to be online to do this. You have to load the base map in order for you to see how it tallies with what has been obtained using the satellite. And to do that, we are going to install a plugin. Plugins are just like packages that you install in Python. It doesn't come pre-installed in QGIS, so you can always install them. So you go to this plugins menu, click on it, and click on manage and install plugins. In this place, you have to search for the plugin you want, and the base map is provided by the quick map service. Quick map service. Right now, you see it here. I already have downloaded it, and it's telling me there is a new version available. So let me just click on upgrade. So it will download it and upgrade the plugin. And for you, because you are using it for the first time, it will tell you to install the plugin, so you can just install it. So once it is installed, you will have it under this web here, quick map service. Now, for your own case, you may not have it outlined like this, the way I have several. So what you're going to do, you click on you click on web, quick map service, you click on settings, and on the settings menu, you go to these small services and you click on get contributed pack. Once you click on this get contributed pack, that's when you see it having several options for you to choose from. So we'll go back to web, quick map service. We're going to be using the Google hybrid. Okay, now that we have done that, you see this satellite image of Google and showing us that yes, truly we are in the geology complex as named here. But we have some little error. This may just be, okay, let's change this line to red color somehow so that we'll be seeing, yes. So why this actually happened truly is because, yes, one, your device may have some errors, 2-3 meters error and all that. That's why we don't see it aligning perfectly here. And sometimes the way you walk, sometimes you may not be able to walk just by the edge of the building, and that's why we see these gaps here. So in order for us to maybe work with this particular data, right now we can't really work with it because it's not in a format that we can interact with. So the first thing we're going to do will be to save it as a layer. So we go to right click here and go to export and save this feature as a shapefile. We have several other formats that we can save it in, but for now we can use this S3 shapefile. It's very common, it's very easy to use, and it's one of the most common GIS file formats that you can have. And the name, you have to navigate to where you have your folder. For me, I'm using test just to show you what it can do, and test and click on save. Now we have to make sure that the coordinate reference system, that is CRS, is in a format that we want it. For now, let's suffice that we are using this EPSG 4326 WGS84. Like I said, this is not a GIS class, but I will have explained what this means, but it will take too long to try to explain it. But just assume that you know these things, and we'll just continue from now. So we leave every other thing at its default state. Instead, add save file to map, we'll click on OK. So now we can now work with this particular data set. So if we check this thing off, we'll now see our new layer test appearing here. So what we will do is, now that we have it on, we can now work with it. So if we click on this simple line, we can always go here and say we need a simple line. We can change the color to be black and probably change the thickness, the stroke width. Let's make it, okay, no, we want maybe something like a red. Oh no, sorry. Test. Okay, let's go back to this place. Simple line. Let's click on red. So, because we have the live updates here, whatever we do here in this layer standing panel automatically comes to this place. So now we can now see how to edit this align. But because of our needs, just suffice it to say that we will not be using this particular line to do our editing. But if it is something of, for example, you went to the field to map an outcrop or all that, so you can now edit this particular line by creating a new shape and now going through that line. So, but we're not going to do that. I just want to show you that if you are having only the GPX file, you can't interact with it until you save it as a shapefile. That is when, for example, if you click here, we can now toggle editing and now see if we can edit this line here. So we can now edit this line, but we are not going to be doing that. So we untoggle the edit button. So the next best thing, since we have a satellite image is actually more accurate than what we have here. So we are going to create a new shapefile that we will edit to represent this geology building. The beauty of what we have done is that we have been able to confirm for a fact that this is actually a geology building. So we are going to create a new shapefile layer to mark this particular geology building. So how do we do that? We go on layer, go on create layer, and we are creating a new shapefile layer. Remember, you can create other file formats, but we are using a shapefile. Let's make sure the name is what we want it. In this case, we are saying let it be the geology complex building. That's the name of our shapefile. Now, on this geometry type, leave this UTF-8 to be there as a default. On this geometry type, we want a polygon. And the coordinate reference system, we are still using this WGS84, EPSG4326. And now, what is the name of the field? So we'll just say name. Let's just name. So anytime we are doing this thing, the name of the building will just be there. And we want it to be in the form of a text data, not a number, and the length to be 80. That's good enough. We can now click on Add to Field List and click on OK. Now we have created a new shapefile layer, but we have not edited it yet. So the editing will make it to appear and come as we need it. So first and foremost, let's click this thing off here. So we know we have the geology building here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to right click here and toggle editing. That's one point. Or you go to this layer style, the panel here, and click on this button, this pencil button. It means toggle editing. But before we go ahead, we have to work on the snapping. Snapping means that you have to close in the shape so that there will be no gaps in them. So if we click on this magnet bar, we can now adjust several things. So if we open snapping, okay, let's just put on this advanced configuration, and we'll make sure that all these things are actually turned on. So for now, we need this geology complex. But the best way to actually do this is to go to project and go to snapping options. In this snapping options, we choose the advanced configuration. We want it to be per layer, and this is the layer we are choosing. And we want the topological editing. All these things should be white. And for here, we'll click on avoid overlap on active layer. That's what we want to use. Make sure all these things are, but if it is dark like this, that means it's not turned on. So we want it to be white. Snap on intersection. I want it to self-snap. That means once we get close to the next feature, it automatically snaps into that feature and covers it. So that is what we want, and that is what we have. So now we are going to do editing, and we are going to click on this button here, Add Polygon Feature. Once we click there, we'll use our scroll bar and make it to be a little bit large. So we will start editing. So we click on the end here once, left click once, and take your button to this side. Click again, come to this place, click, come to this place. So you have to be careful doing this so that you will get the whole area. So once I bring it here and I right click, it automatically snaps into the other layer. So if I just right click, it automatically has snapped in, and the ID will give it 1. The name of the building will say Geology Complex, for example, if that's the name that I want to give it to. So I will now click on OK. You see this particular thing represents the geology layer. So if we click on this simple field, we just need it to have a simple line, and let the line color be, for example, red. And okay, let us increase the thickness a little bit. Okay, so this one represents the geology complex. And once we have finished and we are satisfied with what we have done, we click on Save, in order to save all the edits that we have performed on this. So we are clicking on save. So the next thing that we are going to do will be to, okay. So the next thing we're going to do, let us name it. Let us click here and click on properties. And on properties, you can click on name labels, but here we have it in the layer standard panel. We can click on here. What do we have? We want them in single labels and we want the name to appear. In this place, you can always change the way the color looks and the size of the name that you want to give it to, and everything seems to be okay here. So we have geology complex. So we can now still do it for others, and we can now go to this place, maybe ITE workshop, and drag it into this place. Remember, we just need the line string, that is the tracks, and we can say add layer. So what we can do is to go here and okay, let's see this geology complex, and okay, ITE, and click on geology complex, click on shift and zoom to layer, zoom to layers. So we have the ITE complex. So you repeat the same thing for the ITE complex. All you need to do is to create a new layer, or even if you don't want to do that, we can have multiple layers in just one feature. So instead of naming this, for example, geology laboratory complex, let's remove that. Let's remove layer. Okay, we removed it too. No problem. Let us add this ITE workshop layer. We need the line string. Let's add this layer and then add geology complex layer. Okay, we need the line string, add layers. So we have these two. So we can create a new layer and name it new shapefile layer. So let's make sure it is where we want it to be. So we'll just say buildings, for example. That's the name that we want to buildings. That's the name we want to give to the layer. And the geometry type will be polygon. And this name field will be name of building. This has a limitation of in character name building. I think that's all. Yes. It has, I think, 13 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can't go more than 13, but it's okay. And we can now add it. It's text data. We can now add it to this and click on OK. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be digitizing this building. For this one, we know it is geology. So we click on this and still toggle on our editing. Toggle on editing. Remember, if we go to project and go to snapping options, if we check on this building, we want to make sure that all these are active. Avoid overlap on active layer. All these things are okay. So we can start digitizing. Let us put this thing off, this geology. We know we're in geology. So let us zoom into it a little bit and start digitizing. So we click on add polygon feature. So we start adding our polygon, click, right, left click again, another left click, another left click. And once you are here, you can just right click to finish. Like we have the self snapping on, you don't need to go to the end of the line to actually do that. So the ID is 1, the name of the building is geology complex, and we say okay. So we go back here again, then we can now use the pan button here and go to this ITE building. Oh, it's too much. Okay, go to this ITE building. Let's take this line off, and would continue to add the feature. So we click here, we click here, we click here. Somehow it is curved. We click here, click, and once you just right click here, we name it 2, and we name it ITE complex, if that is the name. So click on OK. So I've been able to demonstrate that you can have several of these. So if you click on this building, click on layer standing panel, click on this label thing, and we need single label, and that single label should have the name of the building here. So we have these names coming out here. So we can always style these names depending on the way we want it. So if we check this thing off, for example, we have 2 buildings, the IT complex and the geology complex. So that is what we have. So this one we can now say zoom to layers. So we have these 2 complexes. We can still style this, go to this place, and in the way the something looks, this simple fill, we just want a simple line, and we want it to be red in color, and it appears here. The size, we need it to be like 1 here, and like I said, we have the live updates here. So as soon as you do it, it appears there automatically. So that's how we add some of this data. So you can do it separately depending on your need. You can do it in one because the shapefile can contain so many features at the same time. So if we look at this attribute table here, open attribute table, we will see that we have the ID one, we have the other one 2, we have the name of the building. One is geology complex, the other one is IT complex, and all that. So that is how you add these buildings to it. You know, like I said, the idea of the map is just to show us where these things are located. But once we go enough further, you will see that the idea of what we did is tantamount to having a ground truth information. We can now grant truth that, yes, of course, these particular features that we have seen in this satellite map can also be seen on ground like that, and it represents same feature. So going further, we will still talk about how to do several other things. But for the purpose of this video, we have been able to learn how to bring in our data in this GPX format into QGIS, how to create and edit these layers, how to make a shapefile layer to represent these buildings, and going further, we'll see how to actually create other things there. So we have been able to create polygons and all that. Let me just say something again. For those people that did for drainages and co, what you need to digitize will be to, when you are creating a layer, you are now creating a new shapefile layer, and that new shapefile layer will be, maybe you give it a name, for example, drainages, if you have different drainages, and in the geometry type, it will now be a line string, and the name of, we'll just give it name, it is text data, and we add it to the list, and we say okay. So if we start editing, you click on this toggle editing. Let's assume, a big assumption this time around, we click on here to add feature. We need a drainage line, and we click on finish. So the ID will be 1. This will be drainage around post office, for example. So just to name it. And we now click on OK. So we have that line here. And we can always style that line, and we can make the stroke width to be bigger, for example. So this one will now represent the drainage, and if we name it here, we use single labels and we use the name field, you will see that this is the drainage around post office. So, and if, for example, you have points, for example, trees that you have seen, for example, this tree, and you know the name, we won't represent a tree with a polygon, we'll represent it with a point. So we can create another shapefile layer, new shapefile layer, and we can name this thing trees, for example. These points will represent trees. In the geometry type, we'll click on points. We still leave this the the coordinate reference system at WGS84, and we say name again. But you can give it something that may be more interesting than just name. But remember, it has a limitation in the number of characters. I think it has 12 characters limit. So we click on OK, and those are point features. So all you need to do is to click on trees and click on toggle editing. You can now start adding points. So if we add this, for example, ID1, the tree is, for example, they named these trees, and there, so we can now say maybe a neem tree, for example, and we click on OK. So we have these points here. So once you click on the labels and look at the labels, oh sorry, style labels, we have it as a name. We have this as a name tree, but maybe because it is green there, we can make this point red in order for the name tree to come. In other things, you can still learn how to style some of these names and how they come out. So the point is, we have a name tree here, and so that's how you create polygons, lines, and points. So if you take off this thing off here, and you click on Shift, oh sorry, you click on Control and click on this tree, and say zoom to layers, we'll have all this in a particular place. So we have been able to digitize this, and that is the purpose for what we have done so far. So to conclude, what we did was to be able to import this data into QGIS, and remember, you have to be online in order to use the Google hybrid map to correlate what you have done on ground and what you are seeing on the map as compared to with the satellite imagery here. We have been able to create points to represent something like trees. We have been able to create lines to represent something like roads and drainages. We have been able to create polygons to represent these complexes and these buildings. So the next part of this little training will be how to now further analyze this data and create maps that will adequately represent these points of interest that we have mapped in GIS 22, GIS Day 2022. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, you can always contact me.